A unique spectacle. Every year in spring, the paths of 1 billion migrating birds cross. In Israel, where 3 continents meet: Africa, Europe, and Asia.
Why they make these decisions to move there and not there? What are the costs? What are the benefits? Why they need to migrate so far and risk their life? It's something, that is an agenda for life, that you want to understand this variety of movement phenomena.
Many birds from Central Europe and Eastern Europe and Western Asia are flying. We are like a bottleneck, flying over the Middle East up to Africa. So from our studies now, we know we have 500 million birds twice a year over Israel. So 1 billion birds are flying over Israel.
You get close to the birds in a way that's unique. It's a really intimate encounter. That's wonderful. Indescribable. Every year, in last week of March, when the birds leave their wintering grounds in Africa to migrate to Europe, their first resting place is in Israel. The Great Rift Valley, a geographic trench that runs 6,000 kilometers from Mozambique in the south to Israel here in the north. This is the flyway used by the birds in spring and in autumn. Egyptian and griffon vultures are first. Before sunrise, they search the desert for animals that have died in the night. In this barren landscape, the competition for food is fierce. The vultures have much time before the wolves detect the dead animal. Vultures display unusual migratory behavior, so they're very interesting to ornithologists. Some vultures are sedentary. Others fly to a wide variety of destinations. The Jerusalem-based scientist Ran Natan hopes that the vultures will lead him to the origins of migration. Why birds migrate at all is still largely a mystery to scientists. Almost all animal species have adapted to their environment in the course of evolution. Only migratory birds move regularly from one continent to another.
It's not that there is a profession called ornithologist and you do ornithology by taking a binocular and going to the field. It's the question about the ecology and behavior and evolution of the birds. And in order to answer these questions, you do whatever needed.
Last autumn, Ran Natan lured 40 griffon vultures into a trap and fitted each with a transmitter, like a small backpack.
You see?
Tags record how the vulture moves, where it feeds, and when it rests. When one of these vultures with a data backpack comes within range, the scientist receives a GPS signal.
That's not something that you think about. It's something that is controlling you. When I was a a kid in high school, I didn't go to the high school because I went all days to see the birds. And so it's not that I was looking for scientific challenges. I was fascinated by the birds. It started with fascination and then it became a scientific challenge.
To receive data about how the birds have lived in recent months, Natue has to be within at least 2 kilometres of the transmitter.
In many cases we videotape the bird, and then we know that the bird was, in the first 4 seconds it was standing, and then it was sprinting, and then it was flying, and so we build this key, and then we run what is called machine learning algorithms to train a model from this data set, and then we apply it for the millions of data points that we cannot observe and know the behavior.
There are lots of vultures around, but none seems to have a transmitter.
Further down the canyon.
Natue will not be able to locate all his birds, because many of them die on their seasonal journey. The Red Sea in southern Israel. The eastern flank of the Great Rift Valley marks the border with Jordan. The western flank runs right through Israel. These slopes are like a crash barrier for the migrating birds. The hills produce upcurrent for the great gliders, which have to pass here on their way to Europe and Asia. In the Great Rift Valley, the port of Eilat. Eilat is one of Israel's tourist destinations. And in spring and autumn, it's a flyway for migrating birds. Many pass over the city at a height of 5,000 meters. The tourists don't even notice them. But some of the exhausted birds seek shelter in the city's small parks and ponds. Wagtails, warblers and buntings retreat here from the bustle of the city and replenish their energy reserves for the rest of the journey. Even more important for the migration, the desalination plant behind the city. Fresh water from this facility has made the desert around Eilat fertile. It attracts migrating birds. It's their first sighting of fresh water since the long flight over desert and sea. Flamingos gather at sundown. Spoonbills, herons, and ibises also spend the night at the desalination plant. Scientists have only recently learned that most migrating birds die on their first intercontinental flight. There are many dangers. One is dust storms. Great clouds of fine dirt particles rise seemingly from nowhere and cover the earth like a blanket of smog, sometimes for days. That slows the migration. Birds that don't find shelter in time are led off their flyways. The wasted energy can cost them their lives. In Eilat's desalination ponds, the birds are safe. In the last week of March, when the birds come to Eilat, so do the researchers. As many as 200 of them. The birders, as they're known. The Migration Festival lasts 1 week. In small groups, the birders make field trips to get as close as possible to the birds. Before the sun rises, they set off into the vast landscape to the mountains behind Eilat. Only when the sun's rays have warmed the mountain slopes can the raptors rise. The exact time is crucial to the birders. Now, an hour after dawn, the first birds are rising, being carried by the spiraling thermal over the edge of the Rift Valley. Eagles, buzzards and sparrowhawks, migrating from southern Africa to Central Europe and Scandinavia. Each group of birders has a guide who knows the best watching sites.
Eilat is a huge magnet for birds. It's located just on the edge of a desert between us and Africa. So the birds migrating from Africa now towards Europe must stop in Eilat. It's after 3,000 kilometers of complete desert without any food. So Eilat is supplying the birds the first stop after long days of hunger.
Raptors are normally loners, but here they're all on the same migration route and use the upcurrent together. In just a few minutes, they've risen so high that they're just tiny dots against the sky.
I always loved animals in general, but just learning, I had a professor. He's an expert birder, and he would take us to the field, so he really sparked my interest in birding. So I know that Israel is a really big place where birds migrate to and from Europe and Africa, so I knew that I wanted to come here.
Eilat is one of the few places on Earth where birders can be sure of good watching. The raptors are seen close to the ground for a short while each morning and evening.
I'm a rabbi, I'm the chief rabbi of Gibraltar, and I came here with my brother and sister and my mother. We're celebrating my mother's 88th birthday. She's a keen birder. I'm enjoying the enthusiasts sort of getting excited about the species of birds. Yeah.
When the bird lovers find sick or injured creatures in the mountains, they try to beef them up. The birders seldom see raptors so close. Even when the bird perches on a swaying branch, it holds its head straight and doesn't let the prey out of its sight.
The other birds, but only better. Then they have these giant bills to be able to tear them apart.
At midday, nothing moves above the valley. The raptors are now flying so high above Eilat that they can't be seen from the ground. The Berlin-based wildlife photographer Thomas Krummenacher wanders through the desert looking for songbirds. He comes to Israel each year. There are more species here than anywhere else. He uses a trick to track down the birds in the rocky desert.
Meine
My idea is to create a portrait of the bird as part of this incredibly hostile environment. It's really impressive how the birds can hear the sound of running water at a great distance. That's the reason why I let the water slowly drip from a fair height. It's a sort of imitation spring. In the beginning, it takes about 3 weeks of working every day before you can take the first photo. But after a while, over the years, a sight has been introduced, and then they come after just 1 or 2 days. He positions the camera on a sandbag right next to the artificial spring. Although the birds are very thirsty, Krummenacher has to keep a distance of at least 50 meters. He uses a remote shutter release. When he sees a bird just a few centimeters from the lens, he presses the remote. White-tailed wheatears, desert larks, and Sinai rosefinches. It's very unfortunate for these little birds that they're on the main migration route. Tons of sparrowhawks fly through here, and they like them as a snack. They have lots of natural enemies, so they're very, very careful. The scientist Ran Nathan, together with his colleague Or Spiegel, is still looking for the vultures he fitted with transmitters last autumn. The ornithologists use a portable antenna to receive the signal. At first, they only find a few Nubian ibexes. By ringing the birds, scientists were only able to identify a few stops on the migration route. But modern transmitters work like tachographs. The massive rock face along the Dead Sea is very inaccessible. And at last, the scientists receive a vulture's signal. Now they have to be quick and download the data from the bird's tag before it flies out of range.
Listen to that. So you hear the signal changes because the vulture is moving. Now it's weak. I'm downloading data.
Radio contact for less than a minute is enough to record the activities and positions of the vultures over the past few months.
In general, these tags are providing us excellent data. So now we can see it very easily and observe them and know the behavior, but we can achieve the same effect from the acceleration data when the vulture is flying to the Negev, to the Golan Heights, to Jordan, to Saudi Arabia. Every 10 minutes we know the behavior from the acceleration. And this technology is proving very, very successful for us now.
If the data was successfully transferred to the memory chip, it will provide the scientists with more precise information about the vulture's behavior than was ever possible before. The backpack transmitters are designed to fall off the vultures after 2 years. That's when the €1,000 transmitters are used up. So the wing straps are then released.
What happened in the last decade or even last years, there are two major revolutions in our field. One is with the technology, and the other is the conceptual advancement. And now we can think about, for example, the evolution of migration. We can now answer questions that we have no chance to address them before.
At the Dead Sea, the lowest point on Earth. Because the sun shines unevenly on the slopes of the rocky coast, some layers of air are warmed more quickly than others. The result? Invisible warm columns of air rise. Thermals. Birds are especially susceptible to thermals. Finding strong ones determines how far they can fly. The bee-eater isn't interested in thermals today. He's going courting. When one bird discovers a warm air current, the others follow. The thermal carries the birds in an upward spiral. Soaring thermally saves energy. Simply by flapping their wings, the heavy birds would never be able to cross continents. But without mountains, there are no thermals and no upward winds. Heavy birds can't cross oceans. As soon as the birds have circled up to an altitude of several kilometers, they start to glide. That way they lose height until they find the next upwind. Storks that will soon be building nests in Brandenburg or Alsace fly over the land at speeds of up to 60 kilometers an hour. The ornithologist Yossi Leshem focuses on whole flocks rather than individual birds. They pose a serious threat to air traffic. Leshem has converted some old Russian weather radar into bird radar. He has adapted the equipment so that the electromagnetic waves no longer bounce off clouds, but birds. Leshem observes how many birds are currently in the air, at what altitude, and in what direction they're flying.
You know, Israel is a small country in a junction of 3 continents. From the political point of view, it's a disaster. Of course, we are all the time in the news, you know it. But from the bird migration point, it's heaven here.
Leshem can identify the migratory movements in a radius of 50 kilometers. He has now set up 2 more radar posts. He observes birds over the whole country in real time and sends timely warnings to the airports.
We made it a digitized system, which goes on a computer. So this is the raw video. We got rid of the ground clutter, and each dot is a flock of storks or birds of prey. And each flock, you can see a vector. You see, this is a vector, which the length of the vector shows the velocity, how fast they are moving, and the direction shows the direction of the flock. And you can see that in one picture that you see here, you have 1,341 flocks. Same time. Yeah. Now you can see only one part of 1 square cubic kilometer, and you see quite a lot of many up to 1.5 kilometers.
The migration is now reaching its climax. The force of a collision with a bird can severely damage an aircraft and can even cause it to crash. A video of a military helicopter.
So these are the very basic Newton laws, you know, that as faster the aircraft is flying and as heavier the bird is, when they collide each other, the impact is coming on a much higher rate.
Although the chopper is flying very slowly, the bird smashes through the cockpit window.
If it's a pelican which weighs 10 kilos, the impact is 100 tons. It's like taking 2 tanks here from the armor and in the face of the pilot. And we succeeded on days that there are so many birds. This is a day with many birds. They stop taking off and landing totally.
All over the world, airports located near the coast and on bird migration routes are especially endangered. These include Marseille, Frankfurt, Hamburg and New York, just as much as airports in Israel. Leshem's warning system has been adopted internationally and further developed.
For civilian flight, situation is different because they take off and land, which is the same like airbase, but then they go to 35,000 feet. And this side, sometimes you have a bird even there. They are doing, you know, people say bird brain. I always take it personally. They are not so stupid, the birds. So they know to find a way. Sometimes they have, in these heights of 30,000 feet, they have jet streams. And then they can move instead of 40 kilometers per hour, up to 200 kilometers per hour.
The photographer Thomas Krummenacher at his favorite dune north of Eilat. There's a high concentration of desert and migrating birds here. All he needs now is patience. It can take hours before he has a bird in front of his lens. People cultivate the desert here using artificial irrigation. Palm groves, vegetable gardens and fields of grain, right next to the sand dunes. These artificially created oases are encroaching more and more on the desert landscape. They dislodge the indigenous desert birds, but attract the migrants. The hoopoe tanks up before flying on to its next roosting place, in the plains of France or Germany. The ultimate destination will be Britain, Scandinavia, or Siberia. For the agriculture, it's both a blessing and a curse. For the migrating birds, of course, the fields are a genuine paradise. You shouldn't forget that the birds that arrive here on the northern flyway have often made a 3,000-kilometre non-stop flight across the Sahara. The Sahara is probably one of the harshest ecological barriers for migrating birds. Then they arrive here and find insects in the agricultural fields, masses of food. That's a huge advantage for European migrating birds such as waders, pipits, bluethroats, songbirds, all species of silvered warblers. Unlike the large migrating birds that glide, the songbirds cover long distances by flapping their wings. They're small and light. They don't need the sun. On the contrary, it robs them of energy and makes them more vulnerable to raptors. So they only migrate at night. During the day, they feed. Ultimately, it's what all of us probably want. To be part of nature and see things that are concealed. When you're out in the open all day, you see things close up, close to civilization, and you gain insights into profound mysteries. Thomas Krummenacher has photographed more than 150 bird species for international magazines and journals. In the Great Rift Valley, where the Arabian and African continental plates are imperceptibly separating 2 centimeters a year. The valley grows wider. Here lies one of the hottest deserts in the world, with a climate like the Sahara. For days, Thomas Krummenacher has been looking for something unusual to photograph. Sometimes the only birds that come close to the camera are those that are no longer able to fly. The migration is unpredictable. Thomas Krummenacker would be lost without his many contacts. The photographer is continuously swapping information with other birders. And he reacts to the most interesting tips immediately. He's just heard that a very rare bird has been spotted in this palm grove. At first, he can only see raptors. He has lenses that cost as much as a small car. And his photos often provide researchers with scientific documentation. More and more birders have started turning up to see the rare specimen.
Some nice birds.
No, it isn't this common redstart. It's a pied wheat ear, the hooded variety. This is the first sighting in Israel. Something of a sensation. Ran Natan is on his way to the Hebrew University. He wants to examine the data he's collected from the vultures in the Negev. If all goes well, he'll be able to read the data like a digital diary and find out how the birds have spent the past year. Special software allows him to track the birds' movements by correlating the tag data with maps. A single row of numbers corresponds to the bird's position, its altitude, and its flight speed at a particular time. By comparing this data over a long period, the researcher can determine, for instance, how much the bird eats and when it sleeps, hour by hour, day by day.
The theory of migration has some general theories about migration that, for example, the northern ancestry theory says that the birds that migrating, for example, from the Palearctic, from the European area, for example, to Africa, were originally European birds of high latitudes, and then they discovered that there are good conditions during the winter in Africa, and they migrated to Africa, and they migrated back to breed in higher latitudes. Another theory is exactly the reverse. It's called the southern ancestry, which means that the birds are actually their home, their original home is in Africa. This bird is now living this Gamla gorge here in the Golan Heights. It used to be the largest breeding colony of this species in Israel. As you can see here, it climbs on the thermals and then glides, and then climbs on another thermal and then glides. And here we jump a few hours and reach the Negev Desert. This is the Great Crater, and the eastern part of the Great Crater, you have this ridge and you have this mountain following winds that the vulture enjoys and keeps soaring. And our bird will do another thermal circling, will get quite high and then go down to a cliff, so you have a day in the life of a vulture.
Vultures display unusual migratory behavior, fascinating to researchers.
The basic motivation for this kind of study is to understand movement and why they move this way, is it efficient, and so on.
The vultures fitted with transmitters usually only fly in the vicinity of their breeding grounds, in a radius of 100 kilometres. But there are some exceptions. They fly thousands of kilometres south, feed hardly at all there, and only return months later. Nobody knows why.
Whoops, I got something that I was not expecting. Why these birds are doing something else, and this is an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity to think, oh, what is this? Maybe there's a historical link between these populations. Maybe there are some individuals that belong to this population that is breeding, that do this connection, and they move between this population that was not known before. And we are now using genetic analysis in order to try to understand if this hypothesis can be supported by the genetic diversity.
Ran Nathan suspects that genes from northern and southern vulture populations have mixed over millions of years and compel the birds to migrate. In northern Israel, the Great Rift Valley is greener and milder than in the south. On the shores of Lake Kinneret, where mangoes, oranges and lemons grow. The Migration Festival is drawing to a close. This is the birds' last chance to replenish their energy reserves before they fly on to their breeding grounds. During the migration, the fish ponds are more like bird ponds. The entire world population of rare species, such as the spotted eagle or the black stork, pass this way. They're so shy that they're seldom sighted at their destinations in Western Europe. When they're migrating, birds take greater risks, motivated by hunger. The owners of the fish ponds send out patrols, but they don't frighten off the birds. These storks have found a tree to sleep in, on the Jordanian border. Thousands of black kites heading for their breeding areas in France, Germany, Switzerland, or even Kazakhstan. They're planning to spend the night in this palm grove. They're loners in their breeding areas. They only band together for the migration. Squabbles for the best palm fronds continue on into the evening. Hula Valley in the far north. This is where the great white pelicans gather. Ran Nathan and his team have followed them here.
One interesting kind of information that we can get from the GPS tracking of the pelicans, and it's very difficult to get in any other way, is to get into the big question why birds migrate. And the big question is even bigger because we know that they die during migration. There's a high chances of mortality during migration. And so in order to understand that, we need to quantify how much, what's the frequency of mortality events, where do they, and hopefully why do they die.
There are only a few pelicans here, but Ran Natan is lucky. Evidently one with a transmitter is in the vicinity. While the bird swims around looking for fish, Ran Natan can download his data. He'll soon know where the pelican has been and how it has been living. Who wouldn't want to fly with the birds? Thomas Krummenacker is going to do just that today. His pilot, Annie Rosenstein, has won the Israeli gliding championships several times.
I'm doing this flight for watching birds for many, many years, every season. There is a bird watching center of the army, and there are some bird watchers in this season, and we collect all these reports, trying to build a virtual situation and go according to this.
Of course, this is like waiting for days in a hide for a particular species of bird, and then it appears. You feel a certain tension because, of course, you don't want to mess up this unique situation, technically, photographically. The power glider is going to fly with the birds, with open canopy. The photographer is hoping for perspectives that magazines and book publishers don't get otherwise.
As I told Thomas, I probably born as a bird, and when I fly with birds, I feel part of them.
The journey to the gliding birds starts with engine power. But as soon as they sight birds, the pilot switches off the engine, so as not to frighten them. The thermal draws the aircraft, just like the birds, upwards. It requires a lot of skill to get close to the birds and not collide with them in these tight circles. The storks fly on. Thomas Krummenacker will see them again in just over 2 weeks when he returns to eastern Germany. By then, they will have covered another 3,000 kilometers. You get close to the birds in a way that's unique. It's a really intimate encounter. That's wonderful, indescribable. There's nothing like it.
Unbeschreiblich. Es ist schon ein Lebenserlebnis.
Natue fitted transmitters to 6 pelicans in the autumn. Some of those transmitters have been found by colleagues and sent on to him. Natue reconstructs the bird's tracks at the Hebrew University.
Unfortunately, most of the pelicans we tagged died during the track. One of them was electrified. Another was reaching Lake Suez, where there was a big oil pollution, and the bird was found here in this place. You see, this is not this bird. This bird survived this area and continued, but another bird reached exactly this place. And there was oil pollution, and it was found dead and full with oil by a person that we asked to take it. And this is a very special pelican. It was trapped here in northern part of Israel and then went to Turkey.
The pelican helped Natue make a fascinating discovery. It flew into an area that was previously unknown to the ornithologist.
We asked our colleagues, go there, and they went there and they told us, wow, this is a breeding colony of not only this species of pelican, but another species of pelican which is quite rare. It's the Dalmatian pelican. So this is a great fun of this work and very interesting scientifically to go into the intimate life of birds and see what they do.
Digital tracking shows the movements of the surviving pelicans in the newly discovered breeding area.
The main objective of this is to get us global coverage of movement of animals on the globe, and we want to do it with smaller and smaller animals. So I think you will see in a few years really exciting studies. You will see how animals move over the globes, and we're already there in a way. And this is why we focused on movement, because movement of organisms is one of the most fundamental and impressive characteristic of the natural world.
Back in Eilat, the final day of the Migration Festival, the birders meet on the beach to say goodbye.
You always want to be looking. That's what I learned from a good friend that I made here. Always, even when you're talking or looking out, if there's a window behind, you're always scanning, looking, never taking any breaks, not even for a phone call.
The birders have a week of intense concentration behind them, a week without much sleep.
I've been to so many places. It's almost spiritual, I know, because you watch these things, and when you're on the canyon at the top, when you're watching the raptors migrating, you just feel like you're the only one there. It's really nice. It's a good feeling. I have a lot of contacts now, so hopefully I'll be doing a lot of volunteering and research to get closer to these people and the community. So hopefully I'll be making my way in there.
Each year the migrating birds will pass this way, as if following a biological clock. And the Hula Valley in northern Israel will remain one of the final great roosting places before the birds migrate further. From this well-irrigated area of the Great Rift Valley, thousands of birds will ascend and fly thousands of kilometers further, like the restless cranes that are even now preparing to fly before the morning mist has lifted. The birds that are ill and debilitated by the long migration are easy prey, a feast for predators. Nowhere else in the world do so many migrating birds gather in 1 week. An increasing number of them carry transmitters and collect data about their flyways. The more information provided to researchers, the more precise will be our understanding of their intercontinental flights. Scientists around the world are researching the phenomenon of bird migration, but the key lies here. Most of the birds will now fly along the Great Rift Valley into Lebanon and Syria. There, the main flyway ends. The birds will then fan out and go on their separate ways to Europe and Asia. 6 months later, they will return.